Here are checkpoint 2 directions. Remember, always look up here at the summary box before you turn anything in to make sure you've done everything. It says there's questions in the explanation box you're going to answer, and there's some data tables to fill out. You will have 2 graphs to do from the first 2 tests that we're going to do in this simulation, and there's some questions down at the bottom. Remember, if you come back to it, you can always hit the jump to bookmark, and it'll take you right to the part you need to fill in. So let's see, make sure you read the background information. It'll help you understand a little bit of what's going on and answer some questions. And then, let me fix this. It looks a little funky. There we go. To do the different tests, there'll be a set of little directions and a data table to fill in. So we'll start with test 1, and to do it, we must click this simulation link and go to where they tell us. And then it says, choose the last tab, the one that says acceleration. So when I let it load over here, I'm going to choose the last tab, acceleration, double click, and I'm in. When I go back and look at my directions, it says click on all the boxes like you see right here. All right, so I will do that. It also said make the friction go to none. So if you don't do that, change the friction to 0 and check all these boxes, you'll get yellow, you'll have to redo it. So just make sure everything you have looks like what I'm circling on the right here, all the boxes checked and friction at none. Then it says you're going to complete this data table by changing the applied force to match the numbers. And they're nice and even, 50, 100, 150, 200, and 250. And then it's going to give us an acceleration number for each of those at the simulation. So let me show you how that works. We'll even do the first one together. So it says the force needs to be 50 newtons. So look down here where it says 0 newtons. If I move this little box, this little blue tab, until I get to the point where it says 50, oops, I went too far. I had it and I let go of it. So now I don't see an acceleration, I do see a speed, so I've got to get it to 50 and leave it there. That's one trick. Now when I do that, if you look underneath the speedometer where it says acceleration, and if I go there, won't work because I'll be letting go of the 50. If I look at that number, it says it's 1, oops, I moved my number up to 52 by accident. It says it's 1.0. So the acceleration line, if you look above the orange man, right above him and a little to the left, it gives you your answer. Acceleration is 1 meters per second squared. So I go back here and I just put 1.0. I will then go back here and change this to 100. Oops, I have to reset because I went too far. So I'm going to recheck all my boxes, put it back to none, set this to 100, but notice I'm not quite at 100 because I want you to find out the answer on your own. I look above the orange man for the acceleration number. Do not write that. Please do not write it because I'm at 92 newtons force. Remember, the force number is right above your blue bar. When I let go, it goes to 0. When I move it, it changes. So whatever it says when you put it at 100, you'll put here, and then you'll do 150, 200, and 250. And then you're done with test 1. So how do we do test 2? Well, we set up everything the same. We click on all the boxes. We put no friction. And this time it says we set the force to be 200. So let's go over here and hit reset. Check all of my buttons again. Put my friction at 0. And this time it says set it to be 200. Oops, a little too much. Sorry, it's taking me longer than I would hope to get there. Oh, I took too long and I have to reset. And that might happen, it's no big deal. Recheck all your boxes, go there. And the reason I'm clicking this button, oh, if I do it from the beginning, it'll go right there. So it says I'm going to leave it at 200. And right now, I have a 50 kilogram box. I look here above the man and it said my acceleration was 4, but if I didn't look quick enough, you see it goes away. So it would be 4.0 here. Then I'm not changing my force now. We're leaving it at 200 every time. It says I'm changing my mass. So I need to fix my mass to be 100. So I'm going to reset, check everything, put friction at none. And if this is 50, if I grab another box and stack it on top, now that's how I get to be 100. All right, no problem. I set this to 200, and notice I'm not. And then whatever number would appear here, I would write down. Now don't put this number because I'm not quite at 200, I'm at 150. I don't want to give you the answers, but that's how you'll fill in this next part. For the third part, you'll make the mass go up to 150, find the acceleration when your force is 200, and keep adding mass until you fill out this data table. Last test is test 3. We're going to click on everything like we just did, except this time, I almost put a wrong information in there. This time, we're going to change the friction to maximum. We're going to have an object at 50 grams. We're going to click on our boxes and put friction at maximum. So I need to reset. Test 3 checks all my boxes, but then puts friction all the way to the right. I put it at lots. It says I'm going to leave my 50 kilogram box, and if I look at my data table, I'm changing the force again. So 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300. Remember, my force is down here, so if I move this to the first, there it is, 50. And look what happens. My acceleration is 0. It did not move. All right, so I'll go in here and I'll put 0. Now I'm going to change my force to 100. If I click this button, it goes over to 100, and guess what? It's still 0. 150, 0. 200, 0. 250, 0. Kind of did all the answers there for you. Something changed in this, and you're going to have to figure that out when you're doing your questions. All right, let me erase the answers so it's not there for you. After you've done all your data tables, you're going to answer these 3 questions, and it tells you where. It says, looking at data table 1, tell me the relationship between force and acceleration by highlighting the correct word. What do I mean by that? It says, as force goes up, acceleration does what? You're either going to highlight increase, decrease, or stays the same. And how are you going to know? You're going to look at your data table. If each time in data table 1, these numbers down here get bigger, you're going to say increases. If those numbers go smaller, you're going to say decreases. And if they stay the same the whole time, you'll put stays the same. You're going to do the same thing for number 2, except this time we're looking at mass increases, but the same idea. And in test 3, you're going to tell us what happens to the acceleration as we increase the force in that last test. If you want a higher score, here's what to do for B's and A's. Then we're going to graph 2 things, our test 1 and our test 2 graph. So if I go back up there, here's test 1. It says graph this on the x-axis, all these numbers, and this on the y. When you do graph 2, x-axis for mass, y-axis for acceleration, and you'll do that on Desmos. I'll remind you how in a minute, but if you know how, you'll be able to stop watching this as soon as you see the last thing you have to do. Answer these 2 questions, one about test 1, one about test 2, and look what it says. It says, in test 1, you learned as force increases on an object, the acceleration increases. Okay, we're telling you what happens. You need to prove that with your data. So you can either include data from your graph. In my graph went up or down or stayed the same, whatever. That shows that force and acceleration increase together. Or you can tell me your data table. At a force of 50, my acceleration was 2. At a force of 100, acceleration was 6. And at a force of 200, my acceleration was 8. That proves as force increases, acceleration increases. And you're going to do the same thing for test 2 on what happens to the acceleration when you increase the mass. If you remember how to make graphs, you could stop watching now. If you don't remember how to make graphs, I will show you right now. So we're going to click the link to go to Desmos. First thing we always do is click this plus button on the top left. When we do, we're going to click Table, and then it sets it up just like we hope and get to see. So I go back to my checkpoint, and I go to test 1, so I find out what am I graphing. We said force goes on the x-axis, and that's from 50 to 250. So 50, 100, 150, 200, 200, and 250. I'm going to make up some numbers over here. 2, 5, 9, 11, and 13. Again, don't put my numbers. I'm just making them up. If you notice, though, we don't see anything on our graph. I don't see anything on my graph. So in order to get to see everything, I need to change my view, and I hit this little wrench over here for graph settings. And that's when I do that, all I need to do is change this to a -1, and my X goes all the way up to 250. So I'm going to make this like 260. If I don't, I'm not going to see everything. My Y-axis, I'm going to change to -1. And for you, you're going to pick maybe one number higher than your highest number. My number is 13. Yours might be 15. It might be 3. I don't know. But you're going to make this number 1 higher. For me, again, that's 15. While we're here, we might as well name our axis. The x-axis we said was force, measured in newtons. And the y-axis was acceleration. And that was meters/seconds/seconds. That's the easiest way to put meters per second squared. I click on the wrench, and now I can see my whole graph. But I don't like it. My dots are not connected yet. So I come off to the left side. I click the little gear button that says Edit List. Then I click on my green dot. Now if I drag this line button over, it connects all of my dots. And now I'm done. All I need to do now for this first graph is come here to the top right, hit Share Graph, export image, and download the PNG. Yours probably won't say this. If it does, hit save. If it doesn't, don't worry. It's no big deal. I go back to my checkpoint. This was my first graph here. It pops up on your bottom left of your screen. If I click and hold and just drag that picture, the graph goes where I need it to, and I've got a nice graph labeled and perfect to view. Don't forget, you do have another graph. You're going to do the exact same thing, but for table 2. So you're going to put mass for the x-axis. Your y values will still be your acceleration, and you'll graph it just the same way.